Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. We got some special guests today. It's myself and Tony, of course, joined with Aaron and Sonix. Today's topic is going to be rule sets, and we talked a little bit about rule sets on the previous episode, but we also wanted to bring some top players onto the show so we can get their perspective as well. But before we get into the topic, just real quick, we got to go over Watch the Throne. You guys have probably seen the buzz on Twitter for Watch the Throne for the nomination phase. The voting phase is going to be starting up really soon. On your screen here, you can see that Leo, Tweak, Spargo, Akola, Proto, Banham, Light, Bloom Forever, Gluto, The Buzz, and Mia have qualified so far or have been invited. And yeah, we're looking forward to this event. All of the different Smash podcasts are a part of it. So really big group project coming together to bring you a really sick invitational tournament that's very similar to the likes of Summit. But for now, we're going to get back into this episode. We're going to be talking about rule sets. So me and Tony gave a lot of our opinions on the rule set. And I think the first one I want to go over with you guys is the timer. I think that is, it's a pretty easy rule to change. Getting into stage lists and stuff, that gets really, really complicated. But first thing I want to talk about is timer. And obviously, both of you guys, I think, have very different play styles. I think Aaron is pretty aggressive and Sonix also aggressive, but in matchups where you can abuse the fact that characters have bad approach options, a time is a very valuable resource and can help you win games. So I'll start with you, Aaron. How do you feel about the current timer right now? And I also, just a kind of tip that I want to talk about is thinking about time. Like there's the overall timer, but there's also time per stock, right? So Melee, for example, is 2 minutes a stock. So we are currently longer than Melee games because we're at like 2 minutes and like 15 or 20 seconds per stock about. And then Smash 4 was like the pacing was crazy because it was 3 minutes a stock because it was 2 stocks, 6 minutes and stuff like that. So how do you feel about the time per stock currently?
It's really interesting. I feel like with a lot of the things in rule sets, stage lists, like DSR, no DSR, stuff like that, I feel like most people don't really abuse them in like the ways that they could. Like, I feel like people don't really like know how to. But with something like a timer change, it's one of those things where it forces people to, whether they intentionally or unintentionally do it, it really drastically changes their play style. Like if you watch a streamer and you get matched on Elite and it's like a 3-stock 5-minute Zelda, like it's probably going to time. And it's like, it's just because of the pacing, like you said, like the time per stock. So I think it's just a really interesting like discussion. I think honestly, we're pretty good where we're at with 7 minutes, right? I think it's fine. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like points to lower it or increase it or whatever. So I'm curious what everyone thinks.
What about you, Sonix? How do you feel about the current time? Do you think it's like fine where it's at? And I mean, obviously, if you guys don't want to talk about the timer too much, and there's definitely a billion things to talk about
for sure.
Rule set, so
right. I'm in the same boat, honestly. I think the timer's fine the way it is. I think that I've heard both arguments for increasing it and for lowering the timer. And I think that people struggle to realize that at the end of the day, a game plan is a game plan, and no matter what the timer actually is, like the people that I guess make use of it the most in the first place are gonna stick to that game plan no matter what. Like it could be 3 minutes, it could be 1 minute, it could be 6 minutes. It's gonna be the same game plan. Like if they don't see any openings, they're not gonna rush. Like I know people think that if the timer is lower, then that's gonna force interactions, but I disagree. Like I'm gonna be if I'm playing Wario, I'm gonna be timing Wario out with a minute, the same way I'd be timing him out with 7 minutes, the same way I'd be timing him out if the timer was 10 minutes. Like I am not approaching Wario whatsoever. And that's just one example, right? Like I know Tweak said, for instance, that he also plays with the timer. So like I don't think that it would change much, honestly. Maybe for like the lower level players, I can see them getting pressured into forcing interactions and approaching more, but for the high to top level, I don't think it would change much.
Okay. So sounds good. I mean, for at least like the way I have the same mentality as Sonix in terms of just like what the top players are going to do, but that's why I think cutting like I'm more on the boat of like cutting the fluff, right? Like we know the two top players are going to stare at each other and not approach for 1 to 2 minutes if a timeout's a win condition. Do I think it's the end of the world if we don't do that? Not really. And even for me, I want to lower the timer. Even if we did experiment with it, I would only do it by a minute. Right. I think obviously dropping it to 5 minutes is like extremely drastic. Did you have any like final words on just timers, Tony? I know like you're not too big. Oh, you had something to say, Aaron?
Well, yeah. I completely agree with Sonix. Like, I think the only thing that would change is like, if we did lower it, we might just see it say game on the screen, right? It might go to 3-2-1 more often, but people are still gonna camp. People are still gonna camp, man. Like,
oh, that's never gonna change.
It's never gonna change, and there are so many like things you can do. Like, there's so many like little mental like discussions we could have about how to force your opponent into scrambling more, or whatever. But at the end of the day, like for 99% of the people that compete in Ultimate, it will do nothing except make it go take time more often with the same exact gameplay.
It'll make the games, if you lower the timer by a minute, it'll make the games a minute faster.
And
why I want it to be a part of a thing, because it's like we know that defensive, like not interacting with your opponent in Ultimate is rewarded too much.
Yeah,
that's why there's so many characters with their win conditions. Literally, just like you just heard Sonix. Literally, like I'm playing Wario, I am not approaching him ever, because that's how. I mean, that's just how the game was like designed, and obviously it wasn't designed on a competitive aspect. But yeah.
So on the competitive side, I tend to prefer things just to be smaller, shorter, sweeter, mainly because it makes them simpler. And I think the Ultimate in particular, but just Smash in general, is very complex, and so much so that it's usually pretty chaotic. Like, you just can't account for every single thing. And so reducing just a little bit of that mental clutter in any way, shape, or form, just tend to be in favor of that.
Yeah, I really like that about other fighting games, actually. Like Guilty Gear sets are so quick. They take like literally 5 minutes for a best of 5 to be over a lot of the time. I love that. Honestly, it'd be really cool if Smash had quick, like we're by far the slowest like fighting game, if you want to call us one. Like, we are so slow, and it's actually getting to such like a disgusting point where everybody on Twitter, like I've been saying Ultimate's bad for like 2 years, but now everyone's like Ultimate's bad. Mars is like it's a Mickey Mouse game. Everyone thinks it's boring. Nobody's having fun playing it. I think if anything, like even though we'd still have a slow game plan with like 6 minutes or 5 minutes, like it could like make things more interesting in general. And removing a lot of the mental fluff's a good way to put it.
Personally, like I can see that point, but at the end of the day, if anything, it's gonna encourage more timeouts, at least from the people that you already see timing out, right? Because like the thing is, like for me, I'm gonna use myself as an example, obviously. For me, right, if I have 7 minutes to deal with, I'm not always thinking about the time, right? Because it's 7 minutes, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm up 2 stocks, I'm up a whole stock, but there's only 2 minutes. I mean, there's still 4 minutes left, right? Like at that point, the timing people out is not an option. It's not on the table. Whereas if the timer were, let's say, 5 minutes, it takes me 3 minutes to take 2 stocks, and then I'm up 2 stocks, and then there's 2 minutes left. Like, I'm gonna go for the timeout, and it's gonna be a lot more feasible to go for the timeout when there's 2 minutes left on the clock compared to when there's 4 minutes left on the clock. And I feel like at the end of the day, that would just cause more timeouts, if anything, because again, like it's gonna be more viable to do because it's gonna be less time. The thing about Smash that makes it inherently a more defensive game, or that allows for a bit more prominent defensive play over other fighting games, is the fact that it's a platformer. So because it's a platform fighter, like you have so much more room to play around with in the game, and you can just like escape. For example, like being in the corner isn't as bad as it would be in a traditional fighter like Street Fighter, for example. Like being in the corner is a death sentence in Street Fighter, but in Smash you can just like double jump over people, roll past them, whatever. Like you have so many more options that it's just really gonna come down to like the players in the set, just either deciding, okay, we're gonna make this fast. I'm gonna approach. I either guess right and I beat you, I guess wrong and I lose, or we're gonna take our time to like open each other up and essentially just punish one another for making bad decisions. But if that doesn't happen, like to me, when nobody's getting hit, when nothing is happening on the screen, that's good gameplay to me. And I know people are gonna disagree, but I think it's good gameplay because it just means that both players are playing neutral correctly. They're not overcommitting. They're probably using low risk, high reward or mid reward options, and nothing's happening. Like to me, that's good Smash. To me personally, I know most people are going to disagree with it. Now obviously when people get reads and they work, that's also good Smash. But I much rather prefer that over seeing people just like run at each other and just roll the dice on interactions.
Yeah. You know, it's really cool hearing you say that, especially because I think that you have like the most overlooked advantage state in this game. Like, I think your combos, decision making, and just aggression is literally so perfect. Like, not to just gas you up too much here, but like,
you're spitting though. You're spitting.
Yeah, yeah, you know. Yeah, no, but yeah, for real. So it's cool to hear you say that neutrals are your favorite part. I mean, obviously, right?
That's just like that's the thing, though. You said it yourself. It's mostly advantage state, like, and I'm able to get that advantage state because I'm patient in neutral. Because while I'm being patient in neutral, I'm paying attention to what my opponent's options are, and I'm just like, okay, so if I hit you with this, you're gonna pick this. So next time I get this one hit, I already know what options you're gonna pick, and I know exactly how I'm gonna punish them, and I know exactly what I need to do to take this stock. But I mean, yeah, like I do also enjoy seeing people like Spargo, for instance, who I think is one of the more aggressive players, right? Like I enjoy seeing him space his aerials, bait people, use movement and stuff. But I'm just saying that at the end of the day, the defensive matchups are going to be defensive matchups no matter what, and I don't think that the timer will change that. Like if anything, it's going to promote more defensive play because it's like, okay, it's only 5 minutes, so if I can do this, if I take this stock and there's 3 minutes left, I can just keep camping, and they're going to be forced to interact because there's less time on the clock now, and so there's going to be more timeouts. But that's just what I think.
Right. And I agree. There will be more timeouts, but the mentality for my 5 minute wanting 5 minutes is because if you see a 7 minute match in a defensive matchup, there's probably going to be less than 2 minutes on the clock. So overall, the amount of time you're actually playing is going to be less, and it forces someone to be aggressive sooner, aka 2 minutes sooner, because whoever doesn't have the lead, that's like the forcing interaction part, right? So but I will say, that is the other side of the coin. Like at what point is our players going to start timing out more? And that's something that we just don't know, right? Like maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's kind of like a subjective matter. But I do understand the argument of wanting interactions, right? Because when you take the timer away, that is less time you have in the complete match. And even for players that want to play a bit slower, it's like, well, I don't want to be forced to run in and just take a gamble, in these scenarios, right? And it's just so hard because the pacing of Smash generally has been very, very slow. I mean, even our previous game, Smash 4, it was 3 minutes for one stock. And you could also just instantly lose that one stock in 5 seconds, right? It was a weird game. But Smash 4 was something else. That's all I gotta say about that game.
It was the best Smash game.
I'll pick Brawl
or Brawl, one of the two.
We can. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the timers. Like you guys have your opinions, and I for better or for worse, I just want to establish like the two sides of the coin. And you guys gave great reasonings why you want to keep it at 7 minutes, and I think that's a completely fine argument.
I would be down to try 5 or 6.
But it's always so hard, right? Because one tournament does it, and then that might be known as like the Mickey Mouse tournament with all the timeouts, right? Like, yeah, right.
That's so the thing, man. Yep, I hate that too.
Yeah. What's up, Tony?
I will say that the main reason why nobody's really bringing up raising the time limit is because
oh god, raising.
That's one of those infrastructure issues. I know we mentioned it in the previous episode we did with discussing it as coaches, but the idea is that as you increase the timer, it's going to take longer to run the overall tournament in the worst case scenario. And so at that point, it's a matter of, well, where are you going to pull that time from? And so there's already so little meat left on the bone at this point between just getting ads, trying to space out the tournament bracket so that people aren't just playing all day. And then on top of that, you eventually are going to come to the point where you have to make the decision, do I want 3 out of 5 in my brackets more, or do I want like a 10-minute timer? And I think on average, players would rather have the 3 out of 5 for the added consistency in play, because getting more games in is always going to be more consistent. Even if you're playing a 20-minute set, playing those 20 minutes over 3 games instead of 2 is such a difference maker. Like, you have so much more time where one player isn't just fundamentally on the back foot because of some jank that happened early on in the game.
Yeah, for sure. So the next topic I want to talk about is DSR. How do you guys feel about DSR? Is it even necessary? DSR stands for Dave's Stupid Rule. It's even named after like saying that it's stupid. I'll give the main breakdown of DSR. So essentially, after the player wins a match, the other player cannot, or that winning player, if they ever get to counterpick again, they cannot counterpick on the stage that they just won on. So the last stage you won on, you cannot counterpick to. What this does is it forces game variety for the viewer, but I'm going to more so put it on the competitive aspect. It forces, this is the main argument I've heard from like other TOs and stuff. It forces the players to be, how do I word this? It kind of forces more skill out of the players because they have to be better on multiple stages. They can't just sit there and play one stage and win on that one stage, right? Like you have to be more versatile overall as a player, right? Can you win on Smashville, Town and City, and PS2, right? Like throughout the set or whatnot, right? So there's also modified DSR, which is only the last stage the last one you won on. Then there's regular DSR, which is like every single stage you won on. I think that overall it's just pretty confusing for newer players. I think we should, in my opinion, we should just axe this rule and just give the players one more ban. And then if you feel like, hey, I should probably ban that stage that he just won on, like that's up to the player. But yeah, I just don't feel like the level of skill expression we're getting out of it is worth it because we also want the Smash community to grow, right? So, and another thing about DSR that I'm not too much big of a fan of as well is, to me, we play 2 out of 3s and 3 out of 5s to get a bigger sample size, right? So, and then we'll also talk about this with counterpick stages as well. Why do we have counterpick stages? Because like we get the sample size of game 1. Then games 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all so different from game 1. They don't even have the same stage list because of counterpick stages. Then there's this other rule DSR that applies. Like, why are we straying so far away from like the original sample size? And I know that we want to give players the power to counterpick, so we're not just playing on one entire stage the entire set. But I feel like it almost goes against that. But yeah, that's kind of like my quick breakdown on just DSR, modified DSR. And I mean, how do you feel about it, Aaron?
It's a really interesting topic given the way that our stages currently work, because I think that there are a lot of stages that generally play the exact same way. PS2 and Small Battlefield, there are a lot of intricacies, but they're basically the same. Smashville and Hollow, same sort of thing, right? And in a stage list where we don't have that much variety, it's really hard to not have something like DSR, I think. Because you don't want to have people like abusing the same game plan throughout the whole set. Like, like let's say like I'm Diddy, right? Like I like FD a lot, right? If I was able to just like go back to it every single game, like I would be like really just.
But your
stupid.
opponent has an additional
like
ban.
It would just be stupid.
Compensate for the
and
DSR.
Then,
so that's my like, because if DSR was taken out, you replace the DSR with a ban. So whatever rule set you're thinking that has like 2 bans and DSR, the player would just have 3 bans instead. And if you are not banning FD versus Diddy, newsflash, you are godlike at FD or you don't know anything about Diddy Kong.
Yeah. I don't even really think like Diddy is that good on FD and Ultimate, but it was just like my example. But freaking yeah, I think that works too. But another issue is like all of these things like intermingle so intimately. Like there's also the thing where if you have 3 bands and it's like how many stages are you gonna put into the list, and then like there are so many stages that are just complete dog shit. Like worthless stages. Like I don't know, people always want to mess around with Yoshi's again. People always want to mess around with all these stages that like we know are terrible. And then it's like for me, my optimal stage list is like 5 or 6 stages. And then if you have 3 bands, then like where is the variety, you know? So it's like it's such like it's so subjective that it's just insane.
What about you,
to be honest? Yeah.
I agree with Aaron. I don't know. I feel like not having DSR could make things a lot more complicated than they already are. But I can see the argument for like abolishing DSR. I do think that, like the name suggests, it is a stupid rule. But I feel like we've gotten so used to it at this point that we might as well just keep it and just like announce, hey, there's DSR, and like really make it known and also explain what it is. I do think that MDSR should just go and just keep either like just stick to one of the two. So either we have every tournament with MDSR or we have every tournament with DSR, but then you also need to have a consistent stage list because tournaments love experimenting with different stage lists and different and new stages and stuff. Like Aaron said, like Yoshi's, bringing back Yoshi's for no reason. Some tournaments still have Lilat legal. You know, like we need to come up with a consistent stage list to really say, okay, we're gonna have DSR or we're gonna have MDSR or we're not gonna have DSR. We're just gonna have an extra ban. But I do think that the extra ban could be a little confusing because, at least for me, there's been times where my opponent beats me in a stage and there's no DSR, but I forget about it. And even though I have like enough bans to ban it, I just totally forget that like, oh, there's no DSR. And then they're like, oh yeah, let's go back. And I'm like, oh shit. And then it's
This happens to everyone all the time.
It's really dumb. So I think that the first step to really defining whether or not like, oh, we need DSR, we don't need DSR, is just coming up with like an actual stage list that everybody can agree on. And I think that's the hardest part in this game. That's the thing.
The thing is, it's just like isn't impossible, man. Like if you want to look at it, like I said, it's a subjective thing, but then it's also really objective that stages with walls have so much more added depth that I don't think is like good or healthy depth for the game, like wall clinging and like the linear recovery angles and stuff like that. I don't think that's very good or like fun or competitive. So if you want to get rid of all that, like I said, there's like 5 or 6 stages, and you know you could do 2 bands DSR, and it's really, you know, you have variety there at the end of the day, in my opinion.
Would you be in support of following something like the European stage list with 9 set stages? Not a fan, Sonix?
No,
yeah,
Yoshi's.
Hell no.
3 bands, but there's Kalos and Yoshi's.
Tell me there's 9
bands, but yes, they have the wild stages in there. Yes,
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so then every set, I'm not thinking about what I should ban competitively for my character. I'm thinking about, this is objectively a dog shit stage for competitive play. Let me ban Yoshi's. Let me ban Lilat. Cool. Now 2 of my bans are gone.
The 2 like
okay, well then
Kalos and Yoshi's. I know Kalos is like, some people think it's fine, some people think it's whack.
Yeah. It's pretty normalized at this point here, I'd say, but like I think that stage is bad too. And then, you know, yeah, some regions have like the FF7 stage legal, and that's like why are we doing this, man? No, we do not need 9 stages.
I think
man.
that, I don't know, somebody from like a head TO for, I don't know, let's say the European community, I just feel like there needs to be some sort of organization within the Smash community.
Oh, we're
like,
trying. I'm like talking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's the same thing. Sorry, it's the same thing with the Steve ban. Like, how is there not a unified like decision on this, man? Like, dude, it's so cringe for like all these different regions.
Discord right now, and there's a NA unified rule set, and there's also a like a discussion to talk about Steve bans for 2024. And at the end of the day, every region is going to value something different, right? Like I value, so I'm not a player anymore, and what I value a lot and why I want to abolish DSR is I want this game to be as accessible as possible. I want as much newer players to get into the game so we have more viewership, so there's players that come in and they stick around as long as possible to give this scene and this game that I love so much longevity. So that's what I value. Now, you guys are competitors. You guys are going to value different things. You guys are more comfortable with DSR. You guys want more variety so someone can't like cheese their way with like one stage strategy, which I also respect, right? There's a bunch of different perspectives, and to get everyone, every single region to agree to one thing is impossible. So right now, I'm trying to get them to set up a voting system where it's like, oh, if you're a TO for like X tier or higher tournament, you can get a vote, right? And then we all vote on like, okay, what's going to happen with the Steve, right? Our tournament's going to be able to ban Steves, but they also count 100% towards the Lumi global ranking. Because you see how like that kind of fucks with competitive integrity. The best player in the world plays Steve, and there are other players other than the best player in the world that their best character is Steve. So if they go to this tournament and they bomb, then all of a sudden you're gatekeeping a specific group of people from these tournaments because they can't play at their best. So already that's like directly conflicting, right? But that is that is technically one of the options that people could vote for, right? Or do we just say if your tournament bans Steve, then does it count for nothing, right? Or if your tournament bans Steve, is there a reduced multiplier? Is it only count like maybe 80% towards the rankings? Like there's a lot of different ways we can go about this, but at the end of the day, we need to accept that not everyone is going to agree on one thing, and we need to make a voting system and then set some ground rules. Like that's just how it's going to happen. And is every region going to be happy about it? No. Yeah.
You're always going to have your black sheeps for sure. I mean, like, definitely. Also, I'm curious what you meant about like our mindsets as competitors, as opposed to like your mindset,
right,
where it's like accessibility and stuff. Like, are the things you just listed the main issues of like accessibility that you may think clash with like my mindset and like Sonic's mindset?
I think that's the two
what
sides of the
like.
coin, right? It's
like,
accessibility versus competitive integrity. Because
I mean, why can't they both be like intertwined? What's the issue?
Oh, you made a rule that to a new player it's gonna take them more time, right? Like Ultimate is already a pretty overwhelming game, right? Oh,
to pin that, do you think like really like people are gonna like see DSR at like a local or when they're researching online and like shy away from the game because of that rule? Like, do you really think that
with counter picks, with like, oh, this character's banned sometimes and this character's like a culmination of it? Yes, I can feel it can be overwhelming. DSR alone, absolutely not. And I do think DSR should be something that's voted upon, like, and that's what I'm trying to do with the NA rule set. I'm trying to get all the TOs like X tier or above voting system, and I'm gonna try to get a core, like these core things voted on, right? And I'm not a TO, or I guess I'm a TO currently of a invitational, which invitationals don't count towards global rankings, which obviously makes sense. Yes, thank God. So we've already gone through that phase, right? But I don't even really want to have a vote. I just want there to be a structure to exist that makes sense. And for me, my number one priority, even though accessibility is very important, like I said, I don't think DSR like tips the point of competitive integrity, because even for me, when I'm talking about my opinions for like Steve bans and like rankings, I make it very very clear that competitive integrity for rankings is like, don't ever fuck with that. I think it is insane that if we ever get to the point where it's like, oh yeah, your tournament can like ban Steve and it counts 100% to rankings. That to me is like, that makes me angry. Even though I'm not even a competitor, like I have a lot of friends that are competitors like you guys, right? And then that's just fucked up. It's so fucked up. And I've been a competitor before. I know how hard it is to be a competitor. Like you can't do that. In my opinion, that is like, if it ends up getting voted on, I can't do anything about it. But like that specific part, like the whole rankings thing, like it gets pretty dicey when it comes to a character ban at the very least, and how the global rankings is going to deal with that. And there has to be an answer. You can't just be like, well, fuck it. Like TOs can do what they want to do because you're globally ranking these players, and you got to keep the competitive integrity there, right? That to me should be the number one, especially when it comes to rankings. But it's so hard because we don't have Nintendo to come in and just be like, all right, here's competitive rules. Like we have too much freedom. In Smash 4, it's so easy to get a like unified rule stage list. We had the duck hunt phase, but it came pretty quick because we didn't have like the hazards off option. You know what I mean? Like this game, now we can do hazards off, which was great because we got PS2, but then it also brought a whole can of worms of like, oh shit, now we have too much options, right? If there was only like 5 or 6 competitive stages, then it would be a pretty easy toss.
And the way that I look at it, there are only 5 or 6 competitive stages. I wanted
to hear you guys' thoughts on counterpick stages as well, Aaron. What are your thoughts on, that very first match being very different from the rest of the set in terms of what stages are available?
I think of the old like Japan rule sets where it was you guys probably remember it. It was like FD and like Battlefield and like something else, right? Yeah.
Fuck it.
Let's do that, man. Like let's do something like that. And then like counter picks, like that's when you should be able to pick stages that are really good for your character. Like, you want to go to small, for that little intricate thing. I don't think Smash Bros should even be a starter. To be honest,
that's having pretty starter stages and counterpick stages. Okay.
Absolutely, I think it's really good, especially with DSR.
That's something you pair with like DSR specifically as well. What do you think, Sonix?
For sure.
I'm the same boat, honestly.
Okay.
I personally think that the current stage list is fine, at least the one that we use in NA. But like Aaron said, I do think that sometimes like having PS2 and small battlefield and like the starters is a little dumb because it's like people will be like you'll ask somebody like, hey, like start PS2, and you're like no, or they're like no, and then you end up on small battlefield, which is like technically the same, but it benefits a very specific amount of characters more than it does others, and it's just it's very dumb in my opinion. Because it's really
horrible,
bad.
Man.
But the whole idea of counterpicks, I do think it's fine. Like like having small battlefield as a counterpick, for instance, would be fine. I think because let's say I'm playing against against Slight, like how Fox's Op Smash hits on the small battlefield platform, but it doesn't hit on the PS2 platform. So like if he wants to have that, then he can pick small in the next game, whatever. But I think that having that option, having that opportunity in the first game is just not healthy for the competitive integrity. Other than that, I mean, again, like I think that people shouldn't go too crazy with rule sets and like stage lists and adding certain stages. Like I don't see the need for like PS2, Small Battlefield, Hollow, and Smashville, which are technically the same stage on the same stage list.
I made a video about this in Smash University a long time ago where I was like, why do we have 2 single platforms? Why do we have 2 double platforms? Why do we have like, you know what I mean? It's
exactly
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's like I get it. Like people are trying to have more variety and more stages, but at the end of the day, they're basically the same stage, and they're only going to benefit like a very handful of a handful of characters. So it's not really like, are we really having more options? Are we really having more variety, or is it just benefiting a very small percentage of players? So I think that's worth discussing. I think maybe we should look into other options, and if those other options aren't good, then we should just stick with like maybe 5 or 6 stages that are consistent, that are there, and that they are pretty neutral.
I don't understand why everybody is so like crazy for variety in the stage lists when like Smash Ultimate is the most varied fighting game you can play by far. Like not only just like we have 90 characters, we also like the game fundamentally and mechanically is so much like thousands of interactions happen per match, like micro interactions. Whereas like in a fighting game, there's still hundreds, but it's faster and it's like, it's very similar. You hit your Nagoryuki opener, you do the same combo every time, they're at 20% HP, right? But with Smash, there's so much variety. Like, why can't we have a simple stage
What
list?
are
Like,
the
why?
5 to 6 stages that you would have if you could choose them? And with what number of bands?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, Battlefield, FD, PS2, Smashville, Town.
Those are
Town's a
the
really good
usual
stage.
5 like
Yeah.
cookie cutter starters kind of thing, right?
Then it, then it
After
gets
here, it gets a little nuts.
And you could switch. You could switch PS2 for small. You could switch
I was always a
Smashville for
fan of
hollow.
that, but I always felt like, man, maybe this is too complicated.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to make a stage list where it's like, okay, I'm gonna ban single platforms, or I ban double platforms, and then within double platforms, there's small Battlefield and PS2, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, I only need to use one ban to get rid of both double platforms. But if I don't ban double platforms, my opponent can pick PS2 or small Battlefield, whichever double platform they prefer, right? I always wanted to run a rule set like that. I even had like a fucking crazy Hazards On rule set that I wanted to run with like Fountain of Dreams, but yeah, I definitely got fucking roasted for that. So
yeah, dude, Hazards On, honestly, that actually has a lot of viability too. Like if you want to like stick to that too, like then you could do Smashville, Battlefield and FD and
small Battlefield,
then then Hollow is actually like Hollow and Smashville are very, very different stages with Hazards On, and Hollow doesn't have a hazard; it only has the thing, the portrait changing at the end. So like then you have your single stage, and you have a one like little there's a little bit of cheese to Smashville, but I think it's not egregious at all. I think it's way less egregious than even like Kalos cheese, and that's very consistent. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's interesting too.
Sonix,
I would love
what
that.
stages would you pick?
Honestly, the same as Aaron, and then maybe I would add Kalos, Small Battlefield, and Hollow as counter picks. But the initial, I would keep the same stages Aaron mentioned as starters. I think those are like pretty neutral stages. Like if you don't, and then how many bands? Probably 3 bands. But I don't know.
No, you gotta go 2 bans if you want DSR, right?
That is true, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you can
DSR,
do two
yeah.
DSR with the stage list that I said. Like,
I don't think that's too bad. Yeah, I think 2 bans is fine. Because I'm thinking like most characters are not gonna have more than, at least most meta relevant characters are not gonna have more than 2 like bad stages. So yeah, I think 2 bans is fine.
it's really interesting. My entire career, like I've been playing since like a little bit before Smash 4 came out. I didn't give a fuck about rule sets, like literally, and I've been like a top player, not caring at all. But the past like 6 months or so, like I've really started to understand like how important this stuff really is, especially if you like decide to take advantage of it as like a competitor. Like, dude, I don't know, it's just like really cool that like we're able to have these discussions, to be honest.
Catching up to you, Aaron.
Like it's so relevant.
You're starting to think of the bigger picture and all that stuff, which is very important. And at the very least,
dude,
I know rule sets are really, really subjective, but at the very least, I want it unified. So even though, say NA comes out with their unified rule set and I don't agree with anything on it, like I don't give a fuck. Like as long as it's unified and the players can be like, okay, most NA tournaments I go to, and they won't be required, obviously. Like even when we're doing the discussion for the NA unified rule list or rule set, everyone's voting, but obviously not every region's required to run the rule set. At the end of the day, if you want your region to run your rule set that everyone in your local community is happy about, that's cool too. But at least competitors can be like, okay, I know the NA unified rule list, and if I go to any tournament in NA, most likely will be this rule set. And if not, then I have to give a shit and go out of my way to like look into the rule set to see how different it is from the NA unified rule list, right? So that's something that I hope will get finished very soon. And another thing I kind of wanted to talk about with you guys is, what are your guys' do's and don'ts? I remember actually having a discussion with Fallen, the Rosa player from Smash 4, and he was talking to me about rule sets because he saw the Tweak Talks episode, and he was telling me how he feels like there's certain things that we just don't allow on stages, like for stages, right, for competitive. And we went through so many different phases, all the way dating back all the way to Melee, right? Melee and Brawl, we had some fucking crazy stages, but then we kind of came up with like, all right, no walk-offs, no transformation bullshit, no like side-scrolling shit, right? Like those are the obvious ones. I know, Aaron, you have very strong feeling about walls. Another one I really want to get an opinion on is what do you guys think about, and this is going to apply to Kalos and Hazards on Smashville, any platform that doesn't have stage underneath the platform, directly underneath, right? So Fallen's argument is that those should not be legal, because if there's a platform that doesn't have stage underneath it, there are so many characters that cannot pressure that position of the platform without it overextending really, really hard. In Smash 4, a lot of players would actually time people out on Smashville because we couldn't turn hazards off. And you would literally like just go off, stay on the platform. That would burn 15 seconds, 10 seconds. Platform would come back. Shield was broken in Smash 4. You would shield your way through the stage. And then, onto the other platform. I'm extending outward. Now my shield refreshes. And now I'm coming back in. And that was a very fucked up strategy in Smash 4 that people would abuse, especially characters like Sheik or Diddy who could like monkey flip and stuff like that. I think Kalos is not as bad as that, but it can be. And I think like Diddy, Sheik, Sonic are characters that can kind of whip back and forth between those two extended platforms. So yeah, I mean, one, what are you guys' thoughts about platforms that don't have stage right underneath it? And then other things like walls or slants, I know are pretty topical and stuff. We'll start with you, Aaron.
So it's actually really interesting. The platform thing is another consistent thing, but I don't think that's actually nearly as bad as walls, mainly and primarily due to the fact that for most stages in the game, there's a platform. There's only one stage where there's not. So the amount of time that you practice and play around platforms in our platform fighter is like so much, to the point where I feel like you should be able to make those like decisions and adjustments, especially if it's a static platform like the one on Kalos. I think it's fine. Right. It might mess up your ledge trapping a little bit, but that's why it's a counter pick stage if you're going to have it as a counter pick stage, right? Like, I think that's totally fine. Like, you can, get some advantages or disadvantages based off choosing that. But what I don't like, Kalos, is the walls are garbage. Walls are garbage. Wall clinging is not fun. It's stalling. It's just boring. I don't like the multiple wall jump thing. It doesn't look right. It's weird. And like I said earlier, I don't like the linear recoveries. I don't like Fox just being able to ride the wall and tech it every time, and stuff like that. Like, there needs to be variety there. And I really like how most stages in Smash have that like empty, like kind of V-shaped stage design, where there's a lot more like room and maneuverability and like outplay potential, because you have so much freedom on the stage in Smash as opposed to other fighters. Why are we limiting it now off stage? Like, I could see, again, you could say, counter pick or whatever. I just don't think it's that good competitively. But I think the platform thing is totally fine. Everything else sucks. If your stage has a slant, it should be permabanned. It's terrible. Horrible, not good, glitchy, shit. Walk-off's terrible. Yeah.
Sonix, what are your thoughts on
They're
walls,
all
slants,
bad.
and platforms that don't have stage underneath it?
I think that slants need to go. Like, Yoshi's needs to go, Lilat needs to go. More than slants, I mean, but the reasoning behind the slants though is the fact that it just creates for so much inconsistency, which is something that you don't want it. Like, you don't want at any level of play, no matter what level it is. You don't want that, right? And I'm actually fine with Kalos, mainly because Sonic is broken in Kalos, like straight up. Like,
yes, he is.
Yeah, Sonic can just like spin from side to side in Kalos. However, at the same time, I feel like it's a double-edged sword, because I can't really pressure some characters without overextending, like you said, because of the platforms. So, and like, yeah, the wall actually, it's such a double-edged sword. Like, Kalos is literally the definition of like, if things are going your way, it's fantastic. But if things aren't going your way, like, it's gonna be really hard to like bring things back, because it's just that volatile of a stage. Like, if I'm playing against Wario and Kalos, for example, I already know that he's gonna be air camping the whole time, like timing air dodges, mixing up with like landing aerials, and I'm not gonna be able to punish any of that unless I either hard read the Wario doing something and overextend with whatever it is I'm reading him. And so, yeah, like, I don't know. I don't think it's a good stage. But then again, you could also make the argument for like, oh well, it's a counter pick. Like, if you don't like it, just ban it, right? But personally, I don't know. Like, I get why it would be a legal stage, because you want variety, you want more stages. But if there's a better stage, I don't know. I think you should consider that other stage. Yeah, right, exactly.
Why settle? Why settle for something that is like, you know, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, and then you're saying like, oh, like if it's good for you, then it's really good for you because you can camp more and you can, you know, play really defensive, and it's shit to make comebacks on. Like, if we're even making these like arguments, why are we settling? Why do we have it? And people say the same shit about like Yoshi's and stuff and Lilat, like, oh, it's not so bad if X, Y, and Z. Okay, I don't want to play on not so bad. I want to play on Battlefield. I want to play on fucking FD. I want to play on
like,
something legit.
Of Ultimate, I competed for like the first like 6 months or so, like the very beginning. I remember all my bans. I would just literally sit down and just be like, I don't know what fucking stage list it is, but I ban Yoshi's and Lilat. And some people would be like, "Oh, Lilat's not legal." I'd be like, "Oh, cool, I get to actually ban a stage," and then I'll like ban something else or whatever, right? But like, it was just like a automatic recording.
And that's why
like I ban Yoshi's and Lilat.
That's how it feels playing in Coinbox. Like, why does Coinbox have Yoshi's legal? HBox. Like, okay, we have to ban it every time, and I think it's only 2 bans.
Dude, that stage has been legal in Coinbox since like 2020 , bro.
Oh damn! They knows the history, bro.
Bro, yeah, they need to change that.
Of course, he does.
They need to change that rule set, bro.
So
it's literally been the same rule set since 2020.
I think we all can agree that Kalos is a hyper defensive stage. It is the most defensive stage in the whole entire
hyper defensive,
pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Hyper defensive. The only thing that even comes close is Town, and Town does not have nearly as much bullshit.
I was gonna say my other issue with Kalos that I almost forgot about is that because of the platforms not being close to the stage, some characters get access to like a whole plethora of recovery mix-ups because of the platforms, and I think it's very annoying to deal with because once again, the only way you're going to be able to punish those things is if you overcommit like really hard, and if you guess wrong, guess what happens? Like if I'm trying to edgeguard Aegis, for example, or Fox for that matter, if they have their double jump, they can very easily double jump, air dodge towards a platform, and then like if you guess wrong, you can just straight up die. So exactly. So it's
just get like, reversal.
I don't know. I don't think it's a healthy stage for the competitive integrity because it just allows for so many things that would normally not happen to happen, and it creates a lot of inconsistencies in the play.
Even just like the ledge trapping when they have the ledge jump where you already know they have a huge ledge jump habit and then they're just bad over the rest of the stage, but you can't force them to stay in the corner because all of a sudden they can just go up there and always, like, even if you hit them, like you're going to hit them every single time you get them in that position, but they're just going to be able to guarantee that they get to center. And there's just so many matchups where you can't afford to let your opponent reset to center. But things like Town, where you just know they're going to double jump high and you up air them anyways, but they just can drift in and you just can't stop them unless you're like a very narrow subset of characters. Like you hit them 2 or 3 times, so they're still going to reset.
Yeah. I always compare Kalos to, it's not exactly Duck Hunt. I think Duck Hunt is way more defensive, obviously. But I do think that Kalos is this game's version of Duck Hunt in Smash 4. Like the Smash 4 Duck Hunt of Ultimate is Kalos. It is the most defensive legal stage. I don't think it should be legal, but I mean, it's just I don't know if people understand how like walls are defensive, right? Like Aaron was talking about it. Like there's wall clinging. It also promotes techs. It also promotes like guarantee recoveries where it's like I can like up B into this and like guarantee just tech right off of it, and then go tech wall jump, directional air dodge to ledge. I'm good. There's so the walls are defensive. The platform layout also defensive. And then on top of that, the blast zones, another defensive aspect of that stage, and how large the stage is. Like that's another defensive part about the stage. So it is by far the most defensive stage. And even if you compare it to Northern Cavern, which is like not even considered to be able to use because a lot of people say they have like visual issues with it where like it'll give them headaches or make them feel nauseous. So we just like never gave that stage a chance, which is fair. That stage didn't have the walls. So it's, I don't know. Kalos is such a dice roll, and every time I commentate on Kalos, I know that I'm strapping in for quite a long game because it just heavily favors the person in the lead. It just promotes. Yes.
In our already really slow game. Like,
yeah. So
but at the same time,
oh, go ahead.
Not good.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say that at the same time, like again, I can really see an argument as to why it's legal, because I guess you don't want to see the same stage for every game, right? And like Kalos at least gives you that opportunity, or your
I do.
opponent that opportunity to say, okay, let me change the scenery a little bit. Let's go to this stage. Yes, it is annoying, but I mean technically you do still have the chance to ban it if you really don't want to go there. But I guess my thing would be, if there's a better stage, then we should just consider having that other stage over Kalos.
I think there's a ton of other stages that just give you a lot of room. Like Town and City is a stage that gives you a lot of room. Sometimes you get the side platforms, like sometimes you get really high platforms, which is another defensive platform layout. Any high platform makes it so you can double jump somewhere high and reset your resources by landing on said high platform, right? So I think Town and City is a nice like way to look at, like, oh, this is Kalos if it wasn't so defensive, right? Like if it didn't have fucking everything. And then it also kind of evens out because the platforms will eventually leave. Then it kind of is like, okay, well, you can sit there and camp on that top platform against the little Mac or whatever, right? For 15, 30 seconds, and then boom, clears out, forces interactions again, at least with no platforms and stuff like that. So and like
It's really
I guess
good.
in terms of like, if I think back to when I like competed in Smash 4 and like the POV as a competitor, I would love a stage list where it's like 4 or 5 stages with like maybe one ban with DSR, so you kind of like rotate throughout the neutral stages, but they're all neutral stages, right? I think most competitors, from my experience being a competitor and even my experience now as a commentator / coach, talking to other competitors, most competitors, I would say like 80%, 90% of competitors that I've talked about this kind of stuff with throughout Smash 4 and Ultimate, they just want like 3 to 5 stage lists. Like they just want to play on the neutral stages. You know what I mean? And I just feel like this whole variety argument comes from like the viewers, right? That to me is like the viewer side of things, where they want to see someone get fucking bullshitted on Kalos, or they want to see someone get 0 to death on Yoshi's from Mario. Like it feels like it's always the viewers that want that, not the actual players, or at least like the top level competitors.
And I just feel like it's a bandwagon too. Like I feel like the people that say they want that variety don't actually spend even a nanosecond to think about it. They just see other people saying it and then they say it. Like if we had a 3-stage list, nobody would be complaining about the variety. You'd have your random few people, but what they'd be doing is they'd be talking about how much they fucking hate Steve, or like whatever other bullshit. Like they wouldn't be talking about stages, bro. You know, like I don't know. Or they'd be talking about the match, or you know.
Ooh, bandwagon.
I know last time we had you on, Aaron, we were actually discussing where Aegis and Steve were relative to each other, and I believe at the time your position was that Steve is pretty good, but not quite to the level of oppression where that conversation should be coming up, and especially when there's characters like Aegis on the map. How do you feel about the subject now?
Steve is ridiculously overpowered. Number 1 in the game. By far. But not so much to the point where we should ban him.
That's all I gotta say.
That's where I feel. And Aegis stock's going down, man. Every time Sonix edgeguards an Aegis, man, I just want to fucking I just want to throw her. I just want to throw her on the ground. Fuck you, Pyra.
They deserve it, bro. They deserve it.
They absolutely deserve it.
They do deserve it. They do.
So I guess another topic I want to quickly touch up on before maybe we bounce back to the Steve topic is, how do you guys feel about the counter pick system, in which like a player picks a stage first, then like the whole like stage first over character first? Like in my opinion, this is how I think it should be done. So the player that wins is forced to pick their character. Like, oh, hey, like say Aaron and me just played a match, and then, or game 1, right? Aaron wins. So Aaron would have to then lock in his character, right? So he locks in, say, Diddy Kong, right? Then I get to character counterpick him, right? So then I would lock in my counterpick character, Fox. And then after that, Aaron bans his stages. And then, because now Aaron can make these bans knowing the character matchup, right? Now Aaron knows, okay, it's going to be Diddy Fox. What stages do I not want to play Fox McCloud on? Ban his stages, right? Then, now I go back and I'm like, okay, now that you've banned your stages while knowing the character matchup, I pick stage. So it's a constant back and forth. It went Aaron to me to Aaron to me, right? And we both traded resources and information to get into a stage where it's still like I have that counter pick advantage, but I'm not fucking blind signing Aaron with like some weird fucking bullshit where it's just like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go Yoshi's or like some dumb stage. And then Aaron's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll pick this character. I'm like, ha, got you. Like, I'm going this weird fucking character. I'm going me sword fighter with 3-2-1-1, which is like the perfect thing on this stage specifically. I fucking got your ass. Like, I think stage first over character first is the dumbest shit ever. But how do you guys feel in terms of like, should it be character first, stage first? Like, what kind of order do you guys feel like? We'll start with you, Aaron.
I think you're objectively right. I think there's like no disputing that doing that shit is just horrible. Like that whole character counter pick thing. That being said, I think if there's one thing where I would say like inclusivity and like overcomplication, I would say it's this, right? Because even though I completely agree with how you say it, Ultimate does stage first, then the character, then you're in the game, right? So I think, you know, at the end of the day, like I want to keep that part as simple as possible. Like while I agree with you, I would not really mind either way. I just think, yeah, it's one of those things where it's really hard to do with how our video game operates.
So you think like, that part should be mechanically in terms of, because in Smash 4 we did stage first, even though you picked character first. Remember that? So we actually went against the grain. In terms of
and I thought that was
for you. You feel like whatever the base game system offers is what we should do it in that order. Okay.
I think so, yeah, personally. But I also agree with you. I mean, I would love if everybody was on the same page, and you know, I don't think that part, that whole character counterpick thing, I don't think that part happens enough for it to be like such a relevant thing in my mind. I think you can do like your research, and I also think most people only have one character, and I also think that most players when they play a set are better, like exponentially better than the other person due to how our seeding works, where you won't really get like cheesed by your round 1 or 2 or 3 if you are a top player, right, getting bullshitted, and then by the time you get to the point of bracket where you're fighting like good player versus good player, you both know who each other plays anyways, so it's like you're ready for that fucking you know, counter pick.
What are your thoughts?
I agree with you guys. But like, yeah, I don't really know how you would go about implementing that rule. But I do think that, yeah, like you said, I do think that it should be character first, because especially back in the day, I remember people would like for some fucking reason everybody had a Pocket Mario, bro. Because Yoshi's was legal. So exactly, everybody had a Pocket Mario. So you would ban like you'd play, let's say you and I would play, and you played Fox game 1. I beat your Fox, and then I'm like, okay, Fox player, let me just ban like, I don't know, Battlefield, whatever, small Battlefield, FD, whatever. I just hit random stages. And then boom, you're like, okay. And you just pick Mario, you go to Yoshi's, and it's like, and then you zero to death me because I don't know, it's Yoshi's. So it's like, I think it's like such a dumb gotcha moment. Like, I don't know. I think it's really dumb, but at the same time, like Aaron said,
now it doesn't matter too much because we're kind of like 5 years into the game. Yeah,
exactly. It doesn't matter too much now, but I do think that moving forward, like if if people come to an agreement with what an unified rule set would be like, then yeah, I do think that character first should stick. And in the new Smash game, if there's a new Smash game, I also think that it should be that way, just because it's really stupid. Like it's like, okay, I'm already banning, like you're already counterpicking me with the stage and with the character. Like that's really dumb.
Another thing too, for me personally, it's again like with how Ultimate is specifically, like the next Smash game, I'd love to see some changes by Nintendo. When I'm playing a set with somebody, bro, I do not want to talk to you. I don't want to say anything, even if it's formalities like about banning and stuff. Like I don't like small talk. I don't like anything, right? So this whole like character then stage and character like back and forth is so much like dialogue. This for me, I don't know if anybody like listening, you know, watching this like would agree with me. I just don't want to talk. I don't want to. I just want to get in there, right? And the game, as it is, like lets me get in there.
That's fair.
You know? Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like I'm the opposite. like I'm always going into a set with that mentality of like I don't want to fucking talk. Let's just like PS2, yes, no. And now I'll have people
Yeah.
like actually initiate some sort of conversations, and especially if I'm like a little nervous or like anxious about the tournament or the set, I feel like that conversation helps relieve
Mhm.
some of that anxiety, and then I go into the match like feeling a lot better. But I do agree,
Yeah,
like especially in between
that's
games,
cool.
like you'll have some people that will try and talk, but I think yeah, like no, I'm not trying to talk.
Legit. This, I mean, yeah. Before the set, maybe. After game one, bro, like, oh my god, man, I don't care. I'm just getting worked
get
up
it.
Is
thinking
there ever
about
a
it, bro. Like,
question you
oh my
don't want to
god.
hear no to more than start PS2?
Yeah, no,
The golden
that's
one.
there you go. That's the
No,
one.
but it sucks when you're like PS2 and they're like, let's strike, and then you strike
To
only to
PS2.
end up on PS2, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my god.
that's the worst.
Bro, I hate when they, bro, the worst, like worse than Let's Strike is when they look at me and I'm like, bro, stop
I'll
now.
give you guys a tip. I'll give you guys
We're
a tip.
not rock
This is what
paper.
I did in Smash 4 because I fucking hated Smashville. So I told like everyone would be like, "Yo, Smashville," and I'd be like, "No." But however many stages you can strike, I would just tell them, just not Smashville, this and this.
Yeah.
You can pick any other stage, but just not those three. And I guess especially for your guys' round one, like the skill gap's going to be so large. You guys could probably go in and not even ask like, you want to start PS2? You could just go in and just be like, as long as it's not fucking Kalos, Yoshi's, or whatever. Boom.
I
Pick
do.
any other stage. Like we're good.
No, dude. For my
Yeah,
round one, I
literally,
literally,
yeah.
go
You don't even
wherever.
have to-
Literally,
there's
just
no
go wherever.
interaction.
Go, quick. But I don't like doing that though because it's like, okay, that's disrespectful. I like to treat even our round ones, our O tours, as people, right? So give them what they want. But I mean, bro, even if Jazzo came up to me and did this,
Yeah.
bro, I would say the same thing, bro.
Put
No,
the hand
same.
down.
Stop.
Literally, whenever people ask me, like,
Yeah,
whenever
literally.
I'm like PS2 and they're like, I'm like, no, you can ban, bro. Honestly, like, I don't care.
Yeah,
because-
literally.
Oh, yeah, that one works too. You can ban first. Like, I don't care.
yeah, I'm not doing that. Like every single time people are like strike or they do this, I'm like, no, just ban. Or I'll just be like, just go anywhere that isn't, I don't
X,
know,
Y, or Z.
Smashville. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, so the last topic, we'll try to make it quick. We've been going for about an hour or so, but obviously the biggest topic, the Steve one. Let me know what you guys feel like should happen. I'll go first. Actually, we'll go me, Tony, Aaron, and then Sonix can close it out. So, in my opinion, I think if Steve is banned at an event, obviously this is with the intentions of like going into 2024, right? So I think the standard for 2024 should be is if your tournament has Steve banned, it should not count towards the global Lumi rankings. No, that was easy. On you, Tony. And I kind of already explained my reasonings behind that. I think it fucks with the competitive integrity with the game. I think that a bracket gets heavily, really, really heavily affected if Steve is banned. Your tournament is going to be really fucking different if you have all top 50 seeds at your tournament and you ban Steve. That is a very different result. Like that, it fucks up the entire bracket. So that's why I feel.
Until Akola still wins with Pyramithra. Or
It's possible.
I'm just kidding.
But I do think Akola's
You're right.
better than his other characters. And I'm not trying to be like a dickhead or anything, but I just think his Steve is a lot better than his other characters. He plays the character the most. He's, very when you're playing that comfort character, even if your other characters are really strong, your comfort character when you're in bracket in those like really fucked up scenarios where you're down a lot and you got to make these comebacks, like you usually only do that with your comfort character because you are comfortable with the character, right? So taking that away from players is so fucked up, and then being like, oh yeah, we're gonna take that away and it still counts the same thing, or like this weird thing of like, oh yeah, we don't count it as bad for the Steve. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what? You gotta have a number behind that, right? You're a ranking system. You can't be like, oh yeah, like if a Steve player goes to a Steve ban event and they don't do so good, like we just don't count it as much. Like that's the metric, as much. Like what, you know what I mean? There has to be, if there is modifiers to things, they have to be black and white. I need to see numbers. What are your thoughts, Sony?
So I do think tool assisted level Steve would be good enough to be banned, but right now it's just a matter of the character performing probably a bit better than the effort that goes into preparing with him. But I don't think the character's currently ban worthy, and more importantly, I don't especially care either way. Like, same thing with the rule set. Anytime I'm working with someone, we're going to look at the tools we have available, the tools that are best able and that they're best prepared to use to get the W's, and then we're going to work on that. Whether that list includes Yoshi's or Steve or anything else, it doesn't matter. If it's going to work for you, you make it work for you, and if it's not, don't worry about it. So that pretty simple for me.
Aaron?
Yeah, Steve is just disgusting. He's a putridly designed character. I hate him. Really broken, really overpowered. But we also have a lot of other really broken and overpowered characters in this game. And above all else, right? Like, I started with Steve, back in the day when he first came out. I liked playing him. I had fun. And I just don't want people to lose their character. I said that before on Twitter. Like, if I was a Steve player, if I was still playing Steve, like, I have Jake in my region. I've talked to him about it, and he's told me, like, yeah, man, like, I would go to these tournaments, but I can't. And I'm just like, dude, like, I don't know. Like I feel like I have enough empathy to be like, dude, that sucks. And then when I said that on Twitter, like, people were like, oh, like, we shouldn't feel bad for them or whatever just because they play the character. But again, like Tony said, like, I feel the same way. I don't think that you would need tasks to have a bannable Steve. I think Aquila needs to clean up 5 of his habits and then he's bannable. I think that's where I'm at with that. But as it stands, it's beatable. I want to play Aquila in tournament. I've never played him. A lot of top players have never played him. And he's the only one really, like, destroying shit, right? And sorry to everybody listening, you're not losing to your Steve or your local because it's Steve.
Uh-oh.
You're losing because of your shit.
Like,
legit. You're losing because you're bad. You're not losing to fucking, 6 in Idaho because he plays Steve and you play Zero Suit. Like, that's not why. So yeah, I just mainly, I don't want people to lose their character. That feels like shit.
And Sonix?
Yeah. I mean, I'm same thing. Like, I think Steve is a really fucked up character. Don't get me wrong, but I can't take anybody that wants him banned seriously, because I will, like, this is what I'll do. I'll be scrolling on Twitter. I look at people that say, like, that are complaining about Steve, that want him banned, and I'll just look up, like, X player against Steve on YouTube. And I'll see them get hit by fucking minecart into anvil. Like, dude, top players get hit by that shit to this day. Like, that's the classic setup. That's literally minecart anvil back air.
Minecart anvil
like,
back air.
You don't fucking back air that shit, bro. Or just get the fuck out of there. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have no right to complain if you're getting hit by the day one bread and butters that people have long since established what the counterplay is. Like, I just can't take it seriously. I'm sorry. And I think that having him banned, like, I think that having him banned for events is already really stupid. But what's even dumber is having those events still count, because it just feels so fraudulent.
Yeah,
it feels
breach
so fraudulent because you're literally banning the best player in the world being there, and then it's like there is not gonna be a consistent way of measuring skill or measuring rank, for that matter, because you can say, oh, let's say, for example, I go to 5 S tiers where where Steve is banned, and those are my only 5 tournaments the whole season, and I win all 5 tournaments, and then Aquila goes to 5 other tournaments, and then he wins, but we never get to fight each other. Like, how are you going to determine who's number 1, who's not? Like, I don't know. I feel like it creates so many loopholes that it's just not worth. And again, it's just fraudulent. Like, how are you banning the best player in the world along with other really good players in the world, and then still deciding to count that as part of the ranking? Like, that makes no sense to me. That makes no sense.
It's such pussy shit, bro. And, like, bro, Ultimate's fucking dog shit. Like, yeah, Steve is dog shit, but, like, giving up and banning him, like, bro, we play a dog shit game.
Exactly.
Like, we can fight the dog shit characters. Like, we signed this contract,
and like
man.
Said, like, I'm with him. Like, same thing. Like, if you're losing to your local Steve, it's not because of Steve. Like, you can beat your local player. You just need to get better at the game. And that's why, like, I made a tweet today, because I keep seeing people just, like, doom post about Ultimate. And I'm just like, dude, like, bro, like, just get better. Like, stop complaining, get better, or quit, bro. Like,
True.
I promise you, nobody's forcing you to play this game.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, I get it. You're passionate about it, but at some point, you gotta really like look within yourself and think about whether or not it's a healthy investment what you're doing, and think about what your real goals are within the game. Because if you're a real competitor, I promise you, Steve is not going to make you quit the game. Like, if you truly enjoy the game, if you truly have goals within the game that you want to accomplish that you haven't yet, Steve is not going to be enough to make you quit. I promise you.
Yeah, and you guys competed through.
G
Just
shit.
real quick. What do you guys think is worse? She
No,
wasn't bannable. Okay,
she
Sonix,
wasn't
you think
bannable.
Smash 4 Bayo
She
was
wasn't bannable.
Dude, it's so hard for me to say because I feel like I'm a little biased because I think Sonic actually did really good against Bayo in
I
that
agree.
game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so did Diddy.
But
so
I will say that people's SDI sucked.
I agree.
It sucked. I played Smash 4 at
Yeah.
at this year's SmashCon, and I played like literally 10 different Bayos. And I did not die sub 100% once because like I actually knew how to SDI. And I don't know, like I was like, damn, was it really always this easy? Because I remember just dying back then and just people complaining and everybody
Yeah.
dying, but I didn't die
Yeah.
once. So you know, it made me think like, wow, like either people sucked at SDIing or she got shadow nerfed. I don't know what the fuck happened, but I don't know. Like saying it's similar. It's very similar with Steve in the sense of people are getting hit by bullshit. People are not winning anymore. Like you'll see people that once used to be at the top now getting dethroned by these newcomers. These people that have to put less effort in the game get demotivated and they don't even lab counterplay. They don't look to see what they're doing wrong or what they could be doing better. They just give up, complain, and then everybody follows the bandwagon. And that's just how it is.
The Twitter.
But in conclusion, I do not think she was bannable. No.
Yeah. All right. I thought she was because of just oversaturation, but I do think I agree with both your guys' points. She did have losing matchups, and also the community was bad at SDIing. Like I wasn't the best at SDI, and I was like a high level player back then, and I would watch matches. I'm like, why is my SDI better than like all of these players like I'm watching on the screen? Like this is criminal. Tony, what are your quick thoughts on Bayo, and then we'll close out. Smash 4 Bayo.
Same concept as everything else. It's I don't blame people for wanting her banned. I'm not gonna lose sleep if she was, but no, not really. Like I knew the counterplay. I helped other people execute the counterplay. They were executing it. The Bayos were counter adapting, but not always winning. Like I don't know. She was the top tier. She was the best character in the game. It happens.
There will always be a best
It
character,
does.
no matter if you ban them or not. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure to give us your opinions on rule sets. There was a lot of different topics, so whatever you're most passionate about, go ahead and throw it on the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as well. And until next time, class dismissed.